Aeor is a mysterious location that has played a major role in the lore and events of Critical Role, so let's take a deep dive into this fascinating and dangerous place. This video is going to contain spoilers for a bunch of Critical Role media, so pause to look at the full list here. Aeor in its prime. Aeor was established in the Age of Arcanum, a time of great magical and technological advancement prior to the Calamity, which saw most of civilization destroyed. Aeor was a flying city that travelled through the skies of Exandria using the power of broomstone, much like the city of Avalir that we saw in EXU Calamity. We don't know a huge amount about what Aeor looked like in its heyday, and most of the information gleaned has come from the exploration of its ruins in the ice-covered islands of Isolcross. The only first-hand description we have of the city in its prime comes from the memories of the Aeormatons, FCG, and Frida, but we will get to those shortly. Aeor was a city governed by mages, in much the same way that Avalir was, and under their rule the city developed advanced magic and technologies, including the inventions of Aeormatons, metal constructs or robots that were sentient, and as we learned via FCG, had souls.
And you see your arms, the shape of them, but it's just kind of like this unique, strange, semi-translucent light. Like this, not as bright as hers necessarily, but present. This kind of fuzzy sparkle. As you kind of turn your hands over in front of you, you can see them like shifting and moving, almost like electrical pulses, but not electricity, not arcane. It's hard to explain. You just feel warm.
What does it mean?
It means you're alive.
How did they achieve such a feat? Well, I have a theory about this. We learned in Campaign 2 that Aeorian scientists were experimenting with one or more Luxon beacons, artifacts which can capture souls of consecuted people and allow them to be reborn into new bodies. My theory is that the Aeorians found a Luxon beacon chock full of souls and were able to use those to grant sentience to the Aeormatons. The Aeormatons eventually fought for and were granted recognition as sentient citizens of the city. In fact, FCG remembered a great parade of Aeormatons through the streets of Aeor.
A skyline of pristine lavender spires. A parade through prismatic cobblestone streets. Thousands of metallic beings cheering, celebrating.
Which I think was probably a celebration of this moment. Despite this, I think it's a safe assumption that some of the rulers of Aeor saw Aeormatons as a tool, since we learned that many of them, including probably FCG, were programmed to assassinate the enemies of Aeor, the political enemies, in an event called the Care and the Culling. This event led to mistrust of Aeorian technology, which is why it has not been found much outside of the ruins of Isolcross. Along with the development of Aeormatons, the scientists, inventors, and mages of the city worked on numerous other technologies, including energy storage in powerful cores, like the one contained within FCG, stasis bubbles that protected those inside and kept them paused in time, threshold crests which could allow a city to plane shift, biological experiments with both diseases and creatures, resulting in some pretty messed up abominations, such as, absorbers, reverses, blah. And most notably, they worked on the Factorum Malleus, the downfall of Aeor. As the mages of Aeor became more and more powerful, they began to question the divinity of the gods and began construction on a device capable of killing a god, the Factorum Malleus, or the Creator Hammer, a device we saw through the memory of Frida.
And within this space, there is a contraption of such immensity you've never ever considered or seen something on this scale. All manner of glowing crystalline devices and whirring mechanical contraptions, funnels and tubes and glass domes and sparks and dozens upon dozens of architects and engineers and magical practitioners all focused in this space. A voice shouts out, Tricona Factorum!
Do you recognize that?
Do I understand it?
You recognize it. And you recognize it. You do not.
What the fuck?
Protect the Factorum.
We don't know exactly when they started work on this or why, but it's probably well before the Calamity, and we got a clue because during the days leading up to the Calamity, word reached Avalir that Aeor was preparing to test a weapon on a smaller flying city called Lathris, which could have been the Factorium Malleus. The next thing we know about this weapon is that at some point in the Calamity, the gods caught wind of it. This weapon was so threatening that despite the betrayer gods and the prime deities just doing everything they could to destroy each other, they called a temporary truce, banded together, and sent Aeor crashing into the ground of Exandria. Aeor did have powerful protections from divine magic, so it was not wholly destroyed, but the damage was great enough that almost its entire population perished. The remains of the city crashed into what is now known as Icelcross, and for centuries it stayed hidden in the ice. Now, the interesting thing to me is how much of this factorium malice did Ludinus know about? There's been a lot of speculation that he could have been in Aeor at some point because we know he is super old, and we know that he's been using a lot of Aeorian tech and is familiar with the ruins. Hopefully by the end of this campaign, we'll get some more solid knowledge on Ludinus's past. Honestly, I would really love one of Critical Role's novels to focus on Ludinus. I think that would be really, really cool. The discovery of Aeor. Aeor's ruins remained a secret for many centuries, but around 828 post-Divergence, explorers stumbled upon the crash site and began exporting relics and artifacts found within the ruins. The news began to spread, and many factions began exploring the site, hoping to gain access to the advanced technology and magic within. One such faction was the Cerberus Assembly, and one of the mages of the assembly, Vesterogna, hired the Mighty Nein for an expedition to Aeor. There, they uncovered a greater plot, which, as it is the end game of Campaign 2, I won't get into here, but we will look at what they found in the Aeor crash site. Whilst the crash site spanned a 3-mile diameter and there were sort of multiple parts of it, the Mighty Nein found a sort of main entrance to the crash site where they entered and began to explore. Now, they were on a bit of a rush deadline, so they did not get to do a detailed or thorough investigation, but we did learn a lot about the city as they hurriedly made their way through. Whilst it's sort of all broken up, the Mighty Nein were able to tell that the city was divided into different wards or neighborhoods, and they explored a couple of them. The Praetorius Ward was a central meeting area and may have been home to the governance of the city, as it was called the Convocation Grounds and Central Deliberations. And it contained a large amphitheater as well as a lot of beautiful buildings and structures. Inside the amphitheater are hundreds of mummified bodies, and on the stage is a woman seemingly addressing the crowd trapped inside a stasis bubble, holding her perfectly in time moments before the fall of the city. When Bell's Hells visited the city, Chetney was able to see glimpses of this moment using grim psychometry.
You close your eyes, you open them once more, and you see a Colosseum filled with hundreds and hundreds of people. A din of all voices blending together, shouting, arguing, yelling, as you see others rushing in from parts of the Colosseum, and robed and armored guardians, like keeping them at bay, shields up, like there's some sort of social tension happening here. There are other figures, themselves wearing similar long draped bits of this robed clothing, and silvers and grays and bits of gold, and you see on top of this like central platform area here this human female who is shouting in a language you do not understand, yelling amongst everyone here. As she continues to yell, you see the kind of the darkened cloud-covered skies above. You see her yelling and expanding her voice magically out amongst the crowd, but the voices get louder. You hear crying, you hear sobbing, and you see as she yells, she is mighty. She is important. There's a station and an air of confidence about her as she yells and shouts outward. Though you can't make out the words themselves, what they mean, you can sense there is authority. There is a promise, an attempt to calm. And right as the voices begin to grow quiet, white light comes and fills the space. And then all you see in the darkness is her standing there, arms outstretched, unmoving.
Many of these stasis bubbles exist within the city, and it's not clear how to release those inside, or if it's even possible at all. The Explorer's Guide to Wildemount leaves it to the GM's discretion, but does offer a few example solutions, such as completing a ritual, destroying an arcane crystal, or using the arms of the betrayers. In only one instance have we seen one of these stasis bubbles destroyed. That is in the novel The Nine Eyes of Lucien. The blue and gold enamel and glass covering the globes, filling the rotunda with a flash of sunset. Warm and cool light flickered in equal measure, a dazzling kaleidoscope that made the room jump to life. Then came a quiet sizzling sound that grew in intensity like a swarm of bees moving down the tunnel toward them. He saw Kree wince, the noise almost unbearable, and then when Lucien felt the urge to drop the journal and cover his ears, the chaos ended, the room abruptly silent. The stasis bubble faded, exposing the ancient elf to closer examination. De Rogna took her torch with her, striding to the center of the chamber, peeling the elf's fingers away from their chest gently with the tenderness of a lover. Whatever magic protected that ancient also had preserved them, and within several heartbeats they began to disappear, turning to dust. So that in that instance, the inhabitants inside did turn to dust, but perhaps Bell's Hells will be able to find a different way to release the stasis bubbles while keeping those inside alive, because that would be so juicy. It was within the Praesidus Ward that the Mighty Nein encountered the first Aeomaton that we have seen in the series, although when they found him, he was broken and had lost most of his memories and function. The group dubbed the robot Charlie.
Charlie. I am designation Charlie. I am an Aeomaton citizen of Aeor. Hello.
The Genesis Ward is not as pretty as the Praesidus Ward, but it contains some of the coolest Aeorian tech. At some point, a huge explosion took place in this district, leaving a huge crater in the center of the neighborhood that leads down to other levels of this area. Within the Genesis Ward, the Mighty Nein found a repair terminal where they were able to repair the broken Charlie.
And standing up out of the sphere, tall, you see Charlie. Whole. Cleaned. Repaired. No visible damage or injury as to where you found him. Looks at all of you. I'm Devexian.
Oh.
Now, of course, if you've been watching Campaign 3, you'll remember that Devexian was the one who found and sold FCG to Dancer, and we learned that after Devexian parted ways with the Mighty Nein, he spent the following years salvaging and repairing Aeomatons and sending them out into the world. This also includes Frida, another Aeomaton that the Bell's Hells met in Uthadern. The Genesis Ward is of particular interest to Bell's Hells at the moment because they learned from a member of the Cerberus Assembly, Astrid Beck, that Ludinus has been working on something there called the Occultus Thalamus for the last 5 years. We don't know what that is, but hopefully they're going to find out. Within the Genesis Ward, the Mighty Nein found an area called the T-Doc Project, which held some really, really cool stuff. Probably the most impressive thing they found there was a machine which combined elements of transmutation and dunamancy to affect time itself. This machine, the temporal dock, allowed one to send themselves back to a specific point in their past, leaving behind an echo in the present. However, these experiments found that even staying in the past for just a few seconds left a lot of physical stress on the body, and if someone stayed too long, their echo in the present would fade and they would just never return. Who knows what the Aeorians could have done if they had been given more time to experiment with this? Well, I mean, I guess Matthew Mercer knows. Elsewhere in the T-Dock, the Mighty Nein found a rejuvenation chamber, which contained 2 machines that, again, messed with time and allowed a person to take a long rest in just a matter of moments. It was very unfortunate that the Mighty Nein was in such a rush because they were, because they really didn't get much time to further explore Aeor. There are a few other locations mentioned in either Campaign 2 or Nine Eyes book, but the Genesis Ward is where they spent most of their time. Well, that's not true. There is one other ward they spent a lot of time in, but I won't talk about that here since it's a lot of big endgame spoilers for Campaign 2. The horrors of Aeor. Now, we can't talk about Aeor without also looking at some of the horrible, creepy monsters that Matthew Mercer invented to populate it. Yay!
You guys rush through and turn towards that hallway. The creature you see with the tail is coming down the hall on the path you are racing towards and turns the corner to face you. As you glance over your shoulder where you came, rounding the corner.
Oh, there's another one.
Bitch!
Oh shit! What is that?
It's a different thingy.
That is the massive bear gorilla-like creature that you had seen 2 of them slaughtered.
Grills is here?
Bear Grylls is here.
Bear Grylls has had a rough year.
The Aeorians didn't just build weapons to fight the divinity, they also used arcane experimentation to breed soldiers and creatures to fight the gods. These were known as Aeorian hunters, and they are truly horrifying. They are immortal, and without much to fight in the ruins of Aeor all these centuries, they're just hanging out, waiting for something to wander into their domain so that they can tear it to pieces. Aeorian absorbers are these cat-like creatures, and before you get excited thinking about how cuddly they must be, check out this long tail with an eyeball on the end of it, which they use to absorb magical energy and then shoot it back out at their enemies. They also have pretty good perception and stealth, perfect for sneaking up on people and pouncing. Aeorian nullifiers are the absolute stuff of nightmares, and I hate them so much. And Matthew Mercer, oh god, why are you like this? Nullifiers do exactly what it says in their name. They are built to counterspell and dispel magic, and these, fun mouths all over its torso can impose a variety of effects like being stunned and frightened. And lastly, Aeorian reverses are these big, hulking, sort of cat/gorilla creatures which are built for strength and melee attacking. They get their name from this reversal ability, which activates whenever someone in range heals themselves. The reverser instead prevents the heal and does force damage instead. Fun! And of course, these creatures are just what we've seen and have been published in the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. I'm sure there are even more twisted creations waiting for us in the depths of Aeor. I hope you have enjoyed this deep dive into Aeor. It's one of my favorite locations from Critical Role because the lore and mystery of it is just very exciting to me. If you enjoy deep dives like this, then you should check out this one that I did about the history and lore of Whitestone. Thank you so much to my patrons who helped me make this video. Head over to patreon.com/Luboffin if you'd like to support the channel and get behind the scenes content. Also, a huge shout out to the Critical Role wiki. I couldn't have done this video without you. You rule. Okay.